How's everyone doing? This is your boy, Lord Thaddeus Cray. As y'all know by now, I caught COVID real bad. But I'm doing better now. I thank you for all your prayers, and I mean that. This one is going to be similar to the Bigfoot, but it's not. It's quite a bit different. It's about the Orang Pendek. Now, what exactly is this thing? Well, it's a thing that's supposedly found in Indonesia. It's literally Indonesian for short person, which in itself is very interesting. So this is not a large cryptid, or I believe it's possible something like this could exist, because you have to understand something. Something smaller, ironically, is more likely to probably actually possibly be able to adapt in certain areas than something larger, because many times larger types of creatures get found easier by people. But supposedly it has been seen and documented for at least 100 years by forest tribes, local villagers. Hell, you have everything from Dutch colonists, Western scientists, travelers to the area. This creature is supposedly, like I said, a small bipedal primate with orange to roughly brown hair, short fur. It stands between 30 and 60 inches tall, which is very, very interesting to say the least. You're talking about something that's quite small, not much larger than, let's say, an orangutan. Maybe what it is, I'm not sure, but supposedly these creatures are, how can I say this? Their behavior seems to point to them being fairly intelligent. And also, there's something else which is called a Hantu Pendek. And this in itself is something that's a little different. Supposedly it looks like the Orang Pendek, but this Hantu Pendek is something more supernatural. Seems to have more paranormal abilities. So I'm wondering if there's a connection. I'm not sure, but I wouldn't be surprised if there's some kind of small undiscovered ape or creature that is in those forests. Supposedly all this is found in the islands of Sumatra and Borneo. You have to understand something. The rainforests out there are completely isolated compared to many of the others on this planet. So you're talking about definitely a niche population of creatures that could easily develop, to say the least. It's very interesting and fascinating. It also reminds me almost of the little people to a degree. There are so many stories of creatures like that who actually seem to have paranormal abilities and skills, if you want to call it that. I definitely believe there's something that's going on. I actually have a fairly strong opinion that something like that probably has been found or will be found eventually. Because it just seems almost how nature would take care of things. And what I mean by that is simple. Usually, when you have an isolated type of environment, nature definitely tends to keep creatures that ain't meant to be discovered in places like that, at least for quite some time. Again, I bring up the panda for an example. That is a bear, and it's legitimately a bear, that is not exactly the most intelligent of creatures, and is quite literally reliant on a niche diet of bamboo. But that thing wasn't found for a long time, and it's a big animal too. So you have to think about this. How much more easy it would be for a smaller animal, especially if it's intelligent and is not wanting to be found, to remain undiscovered. And here's what's so interesting. There have been descriptions of this creature having humanoid features. I'm not talking about, like, of course, a chimpanzee, gorilla, even maybe Bigfoot's going to have humanoid features, but literally very humanoid features, if you know what I'm talking about. At least with some of the descriptions of these creatures. Supposedly, these creatures are both cunning yet dim-witted at the same time, so that actually sounds like a primate. A fairly smart primate on top of it. So I'm thinking definitely that there's something that's going on. Supposedly, people have been outsmarted by these creatures. People who are hunting them to try to find these things. There's also been attacks by these creatures, supposedly ambush attacks and different types of things. And you have to understand right here, an animal like that's probably going to have heightened strength, especially if it's a primate. So, I wouldn't be surprised if there's been some crazy stuff that's been attributed to these things, especially if there is something connected to them which is on the either paranormal or demonic, to say the least. Dutch colonists have definitely had sightings. I'll give you an example right here. There's a guy, his name is Mr. Van Herwin. He described an encounter he had while surveying land in 1923. This is what old boy says. I discovered a dark and hairy creature on a branch. The Sadapa was also hairy on the front of his body. I'm not quite sure what that is. The color was a little lighter than on the back. The very dark hair of its head fell just below the shoulder blades, or even almost to the waist. Had it been standing, the arms would have reached a little above his knees. Sound familiar? They were fairly long, but his legs seemed to me rather short. Again, sound familiar when it comes to a primate. I couldn't see its feet, but I did see some of the toes, which were shaped in a very normal manner. There was nothing repulsive or ugly about his face, nor was it all ape-like. Now, that's interesting in itself, you know what I mean? I'm just saying, this in itself is a very fascinating creature. I didn't even really pay attention to this. I was actually looking through Reddit, and I decided, you know what, why not go ahead and take a look at this thing and do a video on it? So that is what I've decided to do. I'm not going to go ahead and be much longer on this. I want to let you guys know I am working on the final chapter of The Handlers, and hopefully by this week or the next it'll be released. Also, you guys know what I do. I am the producer for Dark Waters Entertainment. If you have had a sighting or encounter, hit me up. Email wesvic@iamdarkwaters.com. You guys be blessed and you be safe.